This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I'm Steve Gould. I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 96, guys. Believe it or not, the big 96. And as I promised, I'm staying on the horse here. I'm getting them out. We got a bunch scheduled. It's been a wild ride. Downloads are up, which is fantastic. Got the sponsor back, and we got some very exciting guests today and coming up. So things are going well. Thank you for all the 5-star reviews. Please keep it up. That really helps get eyes on the show, get contacted by all kinds of people because of that. I want to thank our sponsor, Hero Inc., out of Corona, California, neighbor to where I used to live in SoCal. Do you have a fundraiser coming up, putting together an event and something you need to help market? Hero Industries has you covered. Hero is known for their cute, adorable canine Hero plushies and their stunning challenge coins, but that's not all they have to offer. Hero also offers custom bottle openers, lapel pins, cigar cutters, tactical teddy bears. I have to get my hands on one of those. I don't know what that is. And custom badges. Any logo, any badge, any size, any shape. You pick how you want it. Just send Hero your logo and how you want it, and Hero makes it happen. Hero's excellent customer service makes it easy for you to design your item and offers a variety of accessories to pair with your order. Hero Industries has been working with law enforcement, government agencies, and canine handlers throughout the U.S. since the year 2000 by providing top-notch service with amazing details and one-of-a-kind products. Check out Hero Industries on Instagram at hero_industries_inc or cruise their website at www.hero-industries.com. They really are awesome, guys. They're mom and pop shop, and they're pro law enforcement. They like you. So stop doing business with people that don't like you. Support these guys. If you need any of those services, I stress for you to reach out to them. And one other housekeeping item, I want to thank our wonderful sponsors. I love you. I'm in love with you. Jeremy Woods, Tony Fahey, Jacob Ruth, Rich Emery, Deputy William James Long, excuse me, sir. I'll get it right one of these days. Samantha Harper, the great Gary Steiner, Richard Wilson, Scott O'Donnell, David Diaz, and Timothy Wright. Thank you. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. I see the money come in. The bills for the show come in, goes out. I don't even have to worry about it. It's truly a blessing. So thank you for that. Today's episode, guys, very excited for this one. This guy's got a lot going on. He's got a lot in the works. Crazy career. He was a federal agent. We've had a few federal agents on before. It's a really fun way to kind of mix up the podcast to get these guys on. It's a very different kind of law enforcement. It's very intense. Very much a specialty. He was an ATF special agent, 2 decades undercover, if you can believe it, 2 decades. He's currently working as a law enforcement instructor, and he's the author of a 2022 released book, Storefront Sting: An ATF Agent's Life Undercover. So, without further ado, let me bring on Lou Valoze. Lou, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hey, thank you. God bless you. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. I was excited to see that you were willing to come on here and share some stories. That I'm always baffled. I'm very much just a street cop, uniformed guy. Everybody kind of finds it romantic when you watch these movies and you see these guys go undercover. It seems like it would be the balls, especially when you're like 20, But having been in the business for a while, I don't know if it would be for me, man. That's got to take a toll on you.
Well, it's funny you say romantic, and I grew up in the Miami Vice era, watching that on TV, and when I thought about undercover work, when I came on the job over 30 years ago, I was expecting yachts and supermodels,
white sport jackets.
Yeah, mansions and all that. When in reality, it was trailer parks, ghettos, crack whores, and hoopties, So it was definitely not what I had pictured in my mind, but life rarely is, right?
Right. So that's interesting, man, because the YouTube subscribers will be able to see this, but it's most of the downloads go to podcasts. But Lou is he's a pretty imposing dude. He's in good shape. Did you play? Was your role of kind of like an enforcer type of guy? Because you don't look like a guy you would imagine. You look more like you'd be like the leg breaker.
Again, that's interesting too, because it wasn't. And I'll tell you a quick story of how really my first long-term infiltration was a biker case. And there was an ATF agent in Atlanta who had already infiltrated. He had begun the infiltration of the Outlaws motorcycle gang.
Oh, geez.
And he was working with a task force officer who was with the local sheriff's department. And when they got the invite to go down to Daytona to Bike Week with the Outlaws, the sheriff's department said, "Hey, man, listen, we're pulling our guy out. We didn't really sign up for all this." So he needed a partner. He needed someone else in there. And I had come on, the job. I had done a lot of undercover, but street level stuff mostly, gun buys in alleyways and, fast food restaurant bathrooms and dope buys. But I happened to be the only guy in the Atlanta field division with an undercover motorcycle license. And so that was the criteria by which I got selected. I knew nothing about outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing. The only reason
terrifying.
I had a motorcycle license, I had a Yamaha Virago back when I was like 18 in New York. That was the only reason I had and if you have that on your real license, it carries over to your undercover license. And I remember driving to Atlanta for my first day on the case, calling my buddy in New York and saying, "Hey man, on a Harley, is it 1 down and 4 up when you shift?" I mean, that's how green I was. I'd never even ridden a Harley. And they gave me a big chopper. And, first I dumped the bike right away. On the first ride, I dumped it. And we had 2 informants, these huge guys, these powerhouse guys. They were patched. And they were like, "We're bringing this guy. You're asking us to bring this guy to the clubhouse? He can't even ride can we swear? Are we good to curse?
Yeah, yes. However you speak, sir. Absolutely."
Okay. They were like, "He can't even ride a fucking motorcycle and we got to bring him in." So I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. So when they did my first time, they brought me into the clubhouse. I kept my mouth shut and I just observed. And I saw, how they carried themselves. And after about 20 minutes, I approached the president. Luckily, there was about maybe 6 or 7 outlaws in there. It was a slow night. And I approached the president and I said, "Listen, sir," I introduced myself and I said, "I don't know anything about your culture. I don't know anything about your rules. And I don't want to offend anyone. What I do want to do is I want to learn. I want to learn from you. So, can you teach me? I want to be one of you." And, that's just appealing to his ego. And a lot of those guys have big egos.
Smart.
And he loved it. He ate it up. And it worked so well that I kind of used that for my entire career. Because, if I had gone in there in that clubhouse, and I was still a kid, man. I was probably 23, 24 years old. If I had gone in there, no, correct me, I was in my late 20s at the time. But had I gone in there and tried to act like, an outlaw biker, they would have seen right through me. Right. I mean, they would have sniffed me out right away. So because that approach was successful, I kind of used that throughout. My thing was, hey, man, I have a hustle, right? I got my own hustle. I buy guns off the streets and I take them to my gangster buddies in New York and I sell them and I make a ton of money. That's my hustle. Do you want to be a part of my hustle? You see what I got going on. Let me show you. So I kind of used that. And I did my infiltrations kind of from the outside into all these organizations. And it worked for me. I never really, I was a big dude, but I never played the tough guy role because I used kind of the hustler role that I grew up in, that I really was.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cause there's a seed of truth in that when you're talking to them, because it's true. You do want to learn from them. You don't know their culture, So, he can probably get the genuineness coming off of you. And he's like, "I'm going to take this kid under my wing." That's ingenious.
Yeah. And I did want to become one of them for different reasons, right? For different reasons. But yeah, so like you said, always, and I learned that from some guys I work with, Jay Dobbins, Chris Bayless. These guys were legends and they had, and I learned that from them. Don't go in there pretending you're some ass kicker who's done all this time in prison. They will sniff you out because these guys are smart.
Yeah. Geez, that must, even just talking to the guy must have been very intense for you. I mean,
oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
I mean, and at this time, did you have, like skills to offer? Were you already dealing with guns and stuff or were you just being introduced as a guy that was interested in becoming an outlaw type of thing?
Yeah, no, I already had that hustle set.
So you could offer him that
hustle. Yeah. Listen,
okay.
if you guys want to sell your guns, you want to make some money, I can flip them, so sell them to me. I'll take all the risk. Right. I had a moving truck filled with furniture and I would tell them that this is, a side gig I have. And we had an actual company I had and all that. And my gig was, I would move people from the South up to New York, people who were moving up there. Or vice versa. And, when I bought enough guns, if I had, say I had 100, 150 guns, I would secrete the guns in these people's belongings. That way, if Johnny Law pulled me over on I-95 and started sniffing around, the back of my truck, I can say, listen, man, I'm just driving the truck, moving people. I don't know what's in their boxes and their stuff. That's not my job. And they saw that hustle and they loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Comfortable. Yeah.
And how much, like with an outlaw, they're tight, those guys. So you must have had to spend a lot of time, at least up front, with these guys, right?
Oh yeah, these guys don't just see you and take you in and trust you and make you one of their own. And that's not just the motorcycle guys. That's all what I'll call the upper echelon criminals, organized criminals. They're not trusting people, and with good reason, right? They're always looking out, and not so much even that you're an undercover law enforcement officer, but that you're an informant, or you're a snitch, or you're going to rat on them. So they don't just bring you in. You have to prove yourself. And I did the biker case. That wasn't my thing. I did 2 of those. I did the Outlaws in Atlanta and the Hells Angels in San Diego, but that was not my gig. I didn't really take to those cases. I enjoyed the street gangs, the more street level. I organized crime, but more street level gangs, because to me those were the trigger pullers, right?
Yeah.
If you went around this country and asked every chief of police and every sheriff, what's the biggest problem in your jurisdiction, I don't think one of them is going to say outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Yeah, it's true.
They're going to say it's the 19, 20, 21-year-old trigger puller who's jacking people downtown,
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it was in LA.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 200 gangs and they're all, the young ones are trying to prove themselves and they're the ones killing people. So
I did my first 6 years in LA, and, I was on an LAPD task force. And
oh, wow. Cool.
So, I saw all that firsthand. We were working the MS-13 back in, 91, 92, when no one really knew who they were yet around the country, but they were already in LA just wreaking havoc.
It's crazy, man. It's like the Mexican mafia. I didn't know anything about this stuff when I moved to Southern California, and a couple of LA guys explained it to me. But at this point, MS-13, everybody pays the Mexican mafia now. It's like they're all under that umbrella. It's really, and then the rules and what they can and can't do, and guys that get out of line. It's like that whole subculture. There's a reason there's a whole bunch of movies and documentaries on it, because it's fascinating and freaky, especially MS-13. Yeah, absolutely. These guys are animals. They do not care. I have a question for you about biker gangs. I'm kind of naive. I've taken the mandatory, every 3 or 4 years they'll throw a biker gang thing at us so we don't get ourselves killed when we pull them over. But the guys, how many of these guys are actually doing that? That's their full-time gig. Is it just the top guys? Because the other guys must have day jobs, right? They're not just driving around being outlaws. Yeah,
the majority of them have day jobs. And when you're talking exclusively, I'm talking about 1%ers. The 1%er, there's only maybe 5 or 6 major clubs out there. And they probably maybe the top 5 or 6 officers may do that full time. Most of them have day jobs just to keep appearances, because they're making their money from, like every other gang, from drugs and guns and extortion and whatever they're doing. But the majority of them absolutely have day jobs.
So it's so interesting. I did a lot of road jobs at one point when I was in Eastern Mass, and became friendly with this machinery operator from power company. He's like a big company. And spring rolled around and gloves came off, hat came off, and he had like white power tattoos all over his knuckles and stuff. But he's in the union. So I'm like, he's like, you want to ask about my tattoos? I'm like, do you deal with customers? He's like, no, they don't like me dealing with customers. The thing is, he was the nicest guy. So I felt so awkward all of a sudden. I was like, and then another guy later saw the conversation, was like, well, look in his truck. He's got he was one of, not the Hells Angels, but an under gang to them. I wish I could remember the name. I don't remember it. It was like a sub wizards.
Yeah, there's a bunch of that.
Yeah. Warlocks, or I forget what it was, but I was like, holy cow. And then, of course, come to find out, I asked around about him. He was a bad dude, but he did his day job. He was very nice to me the whole time. Anytime we had interactions, why wouldn't he be? He doesn't want me breathing down his neck, But yeah, that really kind of freaked me out, because I knew he was up kind of to sinister stuff, in his free time. Like, he's making money, then he's out there, doing stuff. So that whole thing is crazy to me. So you were in Georgia. What is as a young ATF agent, what was the first thing, like usually I ask people what their first hot call was, but when was the first time as an agent you got in position and you really had like an adrenaline dump? You were like, it was like a hot situation and you were kind of like, you had to hold it together for the first time, if you know what I mean.
I remember it well. I was lucky enough to get there, and my partner, my first partner, was an undercover guy. He was kind of like a local legend here, down there, I should say. And he had me working undercover right away. My second day on the job, I was buying a gun from a convicted felon. And
throw your baptism by fire.
Absolutely, man. He flipped me an informant. The informant made the introduction, and this guy was about 6'8", about 6'8", multi-convicted felon, gang member, and he wanted to meet me in the bathroom of a burger joint.
Man, this sounds like you're gonna get killed.
Right. So we're in the bathroom of a fast food burger place, and it wasn't really in the hood. It was on a main street, and he insisted on doing the deal once we got into the bathroom inside the stall with the toilet. So,
and you're a big dude.
Yeah, back then I was bigger. I was probably 260. He was like 6'8". He was probably close to 300 pounds. And I walk in. I was very uncomfortable, and he comes in behind me, and we're like this, and he latches the door. And the first thing in my mind is, even though I'm wearing a transmitter, if this guy just comes out of his waistband and just shoots me right now, the cover team is useless to me right now.
Right.
They can avenge my death, basically.
Right.
So, right, the first thing on my mind is, if he even reaches for his waistband. But we're doing a gun deal, so he has to pull a gun out, right? And, here we are.
Right, there's going to be a gun at some point.
So, yeah, so to say it was uncomfortable was crazy, but that's just how he wanted to do it. And, and he did, he pulled the gun out. Of course, it was loaded.
Yeah, they don't go through gun safety, right?
No, they don't. No, there's no muzzle integrity or any of that with these guys. And I did the deal. Everything worked out, and it was great. And you said adrenaline, and what a rush I had from that. I remember, driving back, to the to meet the rest of the cover team, all that, and I have, I got this gun on me. It was a stolen gun. He was a convicted felon. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this gun right here has a story to tell. How many lives has it taken? And how many lives would it have taken, right, if I didn't get it off the street? So, I felt great. I felt proud. I was hyped up. And that was my crack cocaine, because I became addicted. And from that day, I couldn't stop. I wanted bigger and bigger and more cases.
Wow. So, yeah, so you're definitely made for that. You're calling kind of that.
Yeah. I found like the one thing in life I was good at, like hustling, being an undercover, agent, buddying up to scumbags and betraying them.
Hey, God gives us all a vocation, right? He led you
Yeah,
there.
that's all I had. And it doesn't really transfer well over to the private sector after retirement,
Right.
but it's what I did, you know?
Dude, that's intense. I mean, I can just imagine trying to keep your hands from shaking if you're coursing with adrenaline, you know, because it's like you figure the guy only knows a couple things about you. He knows you're going to have cash. He knows you're going to be alone. You know, so it's like a 50-50 shot almost. But you know, your size at least you were a big dude. He probably, if he had something planned, he could have looked at you and been like, this guy give me a run for my money. I don't want to get hurt over this, you know?
Yeah. You know, and that's a question that I get a lot, you know, from people, you know, weren't you scared? Were you always scared that they were going to find out who you were? And my answer to that, I was never scared, and not because I'm some tough guy. I never felt fear or was scared because I was doing what I love to do. You know, how many people can you find what you love to do and then get paid to do it?
Yeah.
And so I loved it. You know, excited, yes, but not because I was doing what I love to do. My biggest concern was never that, you know, they were going to find out I was an undercover ATF agent, because if they found that out, they're going to put as much distance between me and them as possible, because they don't want to bring the heat on their organization, right? They're going to put you on permanent no speak. The biggest danger is that, especially once you start, you know, buying more from these organized crime guys, you know, if you're buying multiple kilos or, you know, 50 machine guns, and now they know you're coming with 50 grand, or you're coming with 75 grand. These guys kill each other all the time, right? Even if you've dealt with them 4 or 5 times, the 6th time might be the time they decide, well, you know what? He's going to be showing up with 70 grand. Why don't we just kill him and take the money?
Right.
Because they do it to each other all the time. That was always the biggest concern.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Wow. Let's go. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry now around getting people to be able to do work that they love, like people, you know, life coaches and all that. I mean, so the fact that you innately found it, that's really cool. That's crazy. So Lou, can you describe a very strange or very bizarre moment in your career?
Man, you know, working undercover, there were so many bizarre moments. It's hard almost to even narrow it down, because nothing ever went as planned. And nothing ever went according to script, because there was no script. You know, it was always a gray area. You know, murder for hires, which as ATF agents, we did quite a few of those. Those were always somewhat bizarre. I would say the most bizarre thing to me was a prominent doctor in Southeast Georgia hired me to kill his wife. And
whoa.
So when I met with him, you know, I was introduced to him, and I met with him, and we were sitting in my undercover car. And, you know, all he knows about me is that I'm willing to kill someone for money, right?
Right.
You know, whether he's thinking I'm some contract killer, he knows I'm only there because I'm willing to kill someone I don't know for money.
Right. That's what kind of person you are.
Right. That's what he knows about me. And we sat in the car, and this to me was utterly bizarre. He opened up to me almost as if he felt he had to justify why he wanted me to kill his wife, and gave me incredibly personal details about their relationship, the reasons, what she was doing to him financially, and his suspecting her of being unfaithful. And then he gives me her work address, where she works, what she drives. And then I figured, just for the hell of it, for the next meeting, I said, hey, this will be a lot cleaner if you give me the gun to do it. So it's a nice clean gun. If you got an extra gun, give me the gun to do it. So, and I was just taking a shot in the dark, and we get together the next time, and he hands me a .38 revolver. And the crazy part is that was her gun he had taken from her several years ago. She never knew what happened to it. So not only did he take her gun, but then he gave it to a hitman to kill her with it.
Talk about a bad husband.
I mean,
Oh
that's
my.
about as bad as it gets. And yeah,
Wow.
his previous wife had drowned in a bathtub at their house.
Oh.
They said no one was home. There was about 8 inches of water, and she drowned. So this guy obviously had some issues, some marital issues,
Yeah.
right?
Do you think he's like a narcissist or something? Like he's
Oh no, without question.
like a
Yep,
psychopath? Yeah.
yep.
Oh my. You know what? He's lucky that you're the one he hired because it got him from killing somebody else. You
Yeah,
saved him
yeah.
from that.
Actually, many years later, the only I don't want to say saving grace, but there was a daughter involved, and he was adamant that when I was going to make it look like a robbery and just shoot her during the robbery, as happens, and he was adamant that I didn't kill her 14-year-old daughter. He was that. I guess that's where he drew the line, right? He was adamant. And fast forward, maybe I don't know, 10 years later, I was at a restaurant with my wife, and this young waitress kept staring at me. And finally, she came over to the table and she said, she goes, "I want to thank you for saving my mother's life." And that was the daughter. I didn't recognize her, but she had grown into a woman. And that was her 7 years later or 10 years later.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you got to meet them after he was arrested and all that.
Yeah. Obviously she testified,
Right.
she went to trial and she testified and all that. So I had gotten, to meet with her on several occasions. Yeah.
Wow. That's an insane story, man. And very depressing. I mean, that's gotta, I mean, I can't imagine how good you felt, number one, for getting that done, but also just disturbing, like to know there's people like that.
Well, that case was so different from all of my other cases, right? Because, the psychological profile of that defendant was so different. A gangster's a gangster, right? And gangsters do gangster shit. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
we do the majority of murder for hires that we do are usually, some gangster who's up on charges or some organized crime guy who wants a witness whacked, right? Or even a prosecutor or a judge, business partner, someone who's going to rat on him, and that's just gangster shit that you expect.
Right.
But not this guy was a physician. He drove a Benz. He was, it was a very different profile. He
Yeah.
wasn't a gangster. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. No, I'm curious. How did that make it to you, like to an ATF agent? Obviously it came through the channels, came through your informants, or
No, that's the craziest part. He lived near the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. He was a doctor and a firearms instructor who worked at that academy was living on a house on his property, and they'd been renting it out. They'd become buddies, and this guy had a military intelligence background and all that, so he figured maybe he would know some mercenary or someone who was willing to do it. And he kept hitting him up, and the guy was like blowing him off. And finally, he was like, "Man, this guy is serious." So he went to the closest ATF office, which was mine.
that is crazy, Lou.
Yeah. Yep.
The balls on that guy to think.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, geez, I'm like a Dudley Do-Right. You know what I mean? I won't jaywalk. This guy's arranging a murder through a one of his tenants.
Yeah. Well, like you said, a narcissist. Total. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are the scariest people. Narcissists for sure. Lou, can you tell us your most intense or terrifying moment? I'm sure you have a plethora, but one of them or a couple, whatever you want.
The most uncomfortable that I've ever been was in Chicago. Again, it was a very different case from the ones I was doing. It was a case where another outlaw case, a member of the Outlaws in Chicago was also a member of the Mafia. In Chicago, they call it the Outfit, is what they call the Italian Mafia. And so this guy was a patched member of the outlaw motorcycle gang in Chicago. He was also a member of the Mike Sarno family, the Italian organized crime family. in Chicago, which was a big deal because it was really the first time that we had seen these two forces working together. We got information from that case that the mafia was using some of these one percenters to do their dirty work. And what this guy had done, he had bombed. One of their rackets was, the mafia. They would put these video gambling machines into businesses all over Chicago. And when they approached you about putting the machines in, it wasn't like they were giving you a choice as a business owner, right?
Right.
It was basically,
can we interest you in a machine?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They weren't given options. Well, just to make a long story short, there was a company that didn't want to play ball. And so, this guy bombed the place. They put bombs in there and blew the place up. So it was a joint investigation between FBI and ATF. And it was probably the only time in my career I ever worked well with that other agency. We just couldn't seem to get along very well. But that case we did. FBI had sent like 3 people informants to go after this guy, and he sniffed them all out. He was a sharp guy, and 2 of these guys were crooked cops, guys he grew up with, but he sniffed them out. So ATF sent me in cold on this guy, no informant. He had a jewelry store, which was a total front for every crime you can imagine was going on at that place. There was no crime he wasn't into. It was a total front for, there was 4 layers to get in there. And then in the back, it was just full of stolen flat screen TV, surround sound systems. And he was having meetings with the mob, with the vice lords, the Latin kings, the gangster disciples. It was just everything. It was like the center of crime. And I went in there with a Crown Royal bag full of gold crowns with bloody teeth still in them that we had gotten from a dentist.
Wow.
And because he did have a sign that said, "We buy gold." And my cover was that I was a kind of a down and out MMA fighter. And I was up there training, helping guys train, kind of like a punching bag, up there, because he was a big fight guy, big fight fan. And, this was 2007, 2008 when the MMA was starting to get real popular.
Right.
And I went in cold on him, and it took me months and months and months to get into this guy. And eventually I got through those layers, and I was in the back where all this shit was going on. But there was one, I could not wear a monitor because he had all these detection devices for that. The cover team couldn't be anywhere near because the local cops would tip him off when they saw the feds.
Oh my gosh.
That's how bad it was. This was in Cicero, which is where Al Capone's headquarters were in Chicago. So basically when I was in there, I was alone. Totally, right? No monitor. No one could hear what I was doing. I would just they made me wear 2 separate recording devices in case one failed. Well, which I was never comfortable with. I wasn't comfortable even wearing a recording device back then with this guy. So there was one occasion where the case agent had me wear, and this is now 2008, a pager that was a recording device. Who was still carrying pagers in 2008?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the iPhone was around then.
Yeah. So a pager, and then this watch. ATF had just bought these watches, and they were about 3/4 of an inch thick, the actual timepiece.
Oh boy.
Because they had these, they had a recording device in it. I mean, it just looked off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that, this guy's place was a jewelry store, and he actually was a jeweler. He knew jewelry. So I go in, and now I've been with this guy 7 or 8 months, but he still was never completely trusted anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in there that day, and it was just the craziest thing. the pager that was a recorder starts beeping. I don't know why to this day, it just starts beeping. And he looks at me, he's like, is that a fucking pager? I go, yeah. He goes, I used to sell pagers. He goes, I can't believe you still got one. He goes, let me see that. So I got to hand him the pager that is it's a recording device.
Oh my gosh.
And remember, I'm back there and he's got, it's barbed wire. If him and, there was a couple gangsters back there, if they're going to kill me again, it's days until anyone finds me.
Right.
So he looks at the pager. He kind of looks. He's like, okay, he presses it and sees some numbers in there, hands it back. And then he looks at the watch I'm wearing. He's like, because we're sitting across from each other. He goes, what the hell kind of watch is that? He goes, look how big it is. He goes, let me see that. Now he's looking at it, right? And he asked me to show it to him, so I show it to him, but I'm not taking it off, right? And there's like no way I'm taking it off and letting him fist fuck it.
Right.
But he made the biggest deal out of it. And the deal we were supposed to do that day didn't happen because he was transfixed on this watch. But he studied it, he looked at it. And at that point, I'm thinking, all right, he knows there's something going on with his watch. He's already wondering why I'm carrying a pager that's beeping for no reason. And I'm like, this is it. If he's going to kill me, he had about 3 of these gangsters with him. I said, no one's even going to know that I'm dead for hours.
Yeah.
If these guys, if they just pull out their guns and shoot me, right? I am on an island right now.
Oh.
That was like the lowest feeling I had. And to make matters worse, and this is on ATF, man. When I got out of there and I was sweating bullets, I got out of there. Like I said, the deal didn't happen. I didn't leave on the best terms with him. I immediately went to my computer when I got back to my hotel and I Googled the name of the watch. And when I Googled the name, the first thing that came up was the Spy Gear website.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Who with the government did the research on this thing before they bought it? Yeah.
Wow.
But that was the moment in my career where my heart sank into my stomach. When I was sitting in that fortress and this guy's looking at this 3/4 inch thick watch of mine, questioning it.
Dude, that's terrifying. What is up with the gear? I had an FBI guy on, Dave Nadolski. He put a thing on his informant in it was probably the early 2000s. It was an actual tape recorder that would click when it was done. And I'm like, why did they do that, Dave? He goes, that's what we were issued. That's what we were authorized to use. And
how that happens? Money. So contracts. So someone who's never worked undercover before, some administrative staff, has a buddy who has some companies and gets him to,
Right.
do the contract with it. That's how that happens. It happens because there's not an agent who works undercover going out and getting those devices and getting those contracts. That's exactly how that happens.
It's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's
yeah,
because in a lot of ways that the federal law enforcement agencies are slick. They have so much tech. And then once in a while you hear a story like this and you're like, man, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it definitely falls through the cracks on occasion. I know now ATF has top-notch stuff.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. And those things like that, what happened to me and that FBI guy, that those are the reasons why I think we now have top-notch stuff.
Yeah. So you do that, Lou, and then you got to go back there again. Are you thinking did the guy Google? You know what I mean? You must have been terrified that the guy looked it up and now you're going to be killed.
So what we did? So we immediately went to the manufacturer and had them send us immediately another watch that didn't have any recording device in it, but it was the same exterior, the same working watch.
Smart.
And my next time I went back there, I said, hey, dude, listen. I said, man, you were so fascinated with this watch. I just put it on account. I said, man, take it. I don't even want it, man. It's yours. And so I'm sure he took it apart and all that shit after that. But that's how we kind of smoothed that one over a little bit. And
woo.
In the end, he got 60 years. It was the longest sentence of my career. 60.
Wow. So that's 3 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, he was already in his 40s, so he's done.
Dang. Yeah. Well, he had a good run. You know, he got
Yeah, yeah, he had a good run.
for a while. So there, I was reading about the book a little bit, and you were talking about it was like a lot of you could use fencing stuff to get guys. Like did you actually have a storefront that you ran?
Yeah, I actually ran four of them myself. We did four storefronts, and then I went around the country um, as a storefront expert. You know,
It's like
they
a
designated
it's like a
me that, and
blueprint for these busts.
yeah, and I helped guys in cities all over the country, guys and girls, set up storefronts and run them.
Like are they like basically pawn shop type of things or
No, no. The storefront concept certainly wasn't a new concept. Like LAPD and NYPD had been doing those back in the 60s and 70s, but they were mostly pawn shop type businesses to disrupt fencing operations, stolen goods. We took the concept and just elevated it. We put it toward getting guns off the street. The first one that I did that kind of sparked all these storefronts all over the country was a tattoo shop in Augusta, Georgia. And we set up shop there. And after 12 months, we had bought 430 crime guns off the streets.
in Augusta? Is that the Masters or the PGA?
Yeah,
Dang.
what they don't show you in all the pageantry and beautiful golf course and all that is that the city is just infested with gangs,
Garbage.
and crime ridden. And we set one up there. Our informant was the tattoo artist, and once we put the story out and about my hustle and how I was bringing these guns up to New York, and we started getting some of these gang members in there. And we bought a few guns and we started buying dope. And no one got arrested. And the word spread and it spiderwebbed. And we found ourselves running out of evidence money.
Wow.
Turning people away with who were bringing in dope because we wanted to make sure we saved that money for guns. But we bought a ton of dope, ton of guns, over 100 defendants. ATF had never seen an operation with that kind of success in such a short duration. 430 crime guns in 12 months. So we started getting phone calls from chiefs of police like, hey, I heard about what you did. Could you do one in my city? So we set up in a different city in Georgia, did another one.
That's
Incredible.
amazing.
And every time we did one, we stepped up our game. We elevated these things to the point where we started out with a tattoo shop, very street level, street gangs. Then we went to kind of a head shop, selling paraphernalia, the stuff that you drink to flush out your system if you have a pee test, rolling papers, bongs, all that kind of stuff. A little more sophisticated. Now we put a PlayStation, an Xbox, pool table. And we made it a place that was very conducive for bad guys to hang out. And now we started getting conspiracies. We started getting gangs that were working together that were putting guns on the street and had a dope running operations. And it was so successful, we did another one in another city in Georgia. Now we did a military surplus store with a shooting range attached to the back, a 3-lane shooting range. So now
Sounds like an awesome store, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it really was a great store. We sold really cool camo stuff and all that. And,
right.
If you were a gangster, you could go in the back. And after we got to examine your gun, of course, get all the details from it, you go in the back and shoot it. Now we have a convicted felon shooting his gun that we have all the details that we can charge him with.
That's great.
And we really stepped up our game with that. So on the fourth one, we elevated once again. We became freight forwarders. We were on the port. We were in Savannah, Georgia, on the port.
Wow.
With a huge, I don't know what it was, 50,000 square foot warehouse, forklifts, stuff coming in and out all the time. We actually did ship goods to Colombia, and we were able to infiltrate Bolivian gun smugglers, the biggest stolen car ring on the eastern seaboard, and we stepped up our game. Now we were at the point where we were getting into complex criminal conspiracies and RICO cases out of the storefront.
Wow, that's insane. When the local people were reaching out, I'm curious. That's a lot. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of defendants. Would it be federal prosecutors along with county and state prosecutors, or would it just all be federal? How'd you guys like prosecute?
So the vast majority would be federal. If we had 100 defendants, it would probably be 75 federal and maybe 25 state.
You guys sometimes you deputize, like I know like the state ADAs can be kind of deputized as federal to work with you guys type of deal.
Yeah, that happens. We deputized police officers, to work with us as task force agents. But we had our own federal prosecutors who took the cases federal, and the ones that were deemed to be, worthy of state cases, that ADAs would take those and prosecute them.
Beautiful.
Wow. But as a Fed, I always wanted everything to go federal.
Of course.
Because the sentences were brutal.
Oh, yeah. We used to my cop job on the Cape, Eastern Mass, was we used to border a federal park, National Seashore, and the federal park rangers would we'd swear them in as police so they could leave the park and work the highway if they had to, because the rules were so different. So when they were in the park, which was like a third of our town, they could stop a car and order everybody out. That that's part of the federal rules. They could.
No probable cause. They can just
get out of the car, start looking at your car, and then when they came onto our highway, they had to remind themselves that they weren't. If they're going to do a motor vehicle stop with our hat, it'd be like we'd back them up and be like, "Ooh, careful! You can't just start rifling through the guy's car. We're not a park. It's not federal property."
It's all getting thrown out if you do it that way.
Yeah, it was funny. The differences were so funny. And also they would once in a while get an OUI, like a drunk driver, and they did not. It was arrest and release. They did not hold for OUIs because the federal magistrate was out of Hyannis, which is like half an hour away, and worked out of the basement of the post office. So he wasn't around. So we would book him, give him the prints, all the BT machine, give him all the documents, and they would sit in our lobby and get a ride out of there. No jail time. It was really, really, really interesting. I mean, you didn't do any of that. You did all the crazy drug stuff, but I always thought it was fascinating contrasting the federal laws, which a lot of times seemed very useful to be able to enforce. So Lou. Yeah,
sometimes it's advantageous to go state with some things. Yeah, but if you're usually looking to get a long sentence, sometimes it's better to go federal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I know they actually had a guy, one of their federal park rangers assaulted, and the guy bit his fingers, and he was bleeding, and the guy went to federal prison. I mean, state of Massachusetts would have been like, don't hurt the police, the feds were like, see you later. You're out of here.
And that's the case where it works, but I personally think feds take too many cases now. I think there's too many cases that go federal now that are not worthy of federal prosecution.
Right. Lou, can you tell us about a positive situation you encountered in your federal career?
Well, I'll give you one that became very positive, even though it ended in a negative way. I still like to take it as a positive because it changed my perspective.
Okay.
We made a huge mistake. My favorite storefront we did was called Statesboro Blues, which we named after the Allman Brothers song, because it was in Statesboro, Georgia. And we had a girl who was selling us pills and, the oxys and all that. And she came up to me one day and said, "Hey, my boyfriend he sells crack cocaine. You interested in that?" And I said, "You know what? I'll check him out, see what he's got. If I can make money on it." I said, "Send him in. I'll check him out." So she sends this guy in. His name was Petey. That's what he called himself. And he was a nice fella, pleasant for a drug dealer. And I bought a bunch of crack from him. And, this, now we're talking 2000, 2009, 2010. Now the statutes for crack cocaine. This guy was a multi-convicted felon, and the statutes are harsh, were very harsh then for crack. So basically, he had sold me 5 or 6 ounces. So just with that one sale, he had bought himself 20 years in federal prison.
Wow.
So we really didn't have to deal with him again. And we would cut guys off because it wasn't worth wasting taxpayer money on buying more evidence when it's not going to really get any more time.
Right.
So, but the girlfriend came back to me and said, hey, Petey really likes you guys and you seem to like him. As a condition of his parole, he has to be employed. Would it be possible for him to work here? And it was very early in the operation. And we're thinking, it's an undercover operation. Now to have a civilian here who's also a future defendant, it presents problems, obviously, right? Because there's across the wall is a cover team with running computer checks and with all that. And so but then we said, we just started, and to have a local face and someone who's already in the criminal community who's known and trusted, man, what a jumpstart he'll give us, right? So greed got the better of us and we hired him. And it helped. So we hired him and we all expected he wasn't going to last anyway, right?
Right. Druggie.
Yeah, we're paying him $10 an hour or whatever. He was working the register. Well, he ended up working there for the duration of the operation, 8 months. By the way, he never stole a dime from us because we had a camera right above the register. And we all grew to love this guy. He ended up being a part of the operation. He ended up, he knew what was going on there, obviously, and he saw it. And he jumped in and helped. He would help negotiate prices down on guns and drugs. He unwittingly would identify guys for us. A guy would come in, sell us a sawed-off shotgun, and give us some street name. He'd walk out, and Petey would be like, "Man, that's so and so. He lives down on 5th Street." We'd be like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
But and then there was all the downtime because even if you did 8 or 10 deals a day, there's a lot of downtime in these, and we spent that time shooting pool, talking shit with him, and he was a good guy. He was so easy to like. He had a good demeanor. He actually kind of broke the monotony of being there, and we would have long, in-depth talks with him. And we, even the guys in the cover room, were like, "Man, Petey's a good dude."
Yeah.
And he doesn't steal. He never stole from us. So by the end of the case, we're all thinking, "Damn, this sucks."
Yeah.
We're going to walk away, and Petey's going to prison for 20 years. And there was no stopping it. We even tried to talk to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And because of his criminal history and the amount he had sold, they were like, no. So it caused a lot of internal trouble for me and the other undercovers. We felt very conflicted. And when we decided he would be arrested separately in the roundup from everyone else, he was arrested first. But he was put in the same facility the marshals had a contract with, county jail, where everyone else was going. So first of all, he tried to commit suicide when he found out who we were, right? Unsuccessfully, luckily. Then when the next day they bring in everyone else and, now these guys are putting it together, who we really were. And now they're looking at him and they're like, wait a minute, he was behind the counter with these guys the whole time. So now they're thinking, he's a snitch.
Yeah.
So he had to be put in protective custody and moved. And I actually got up on the stand in federal court and tried to get him a downward departure in his sentence for the first time, and probably in my career. I got up and was asking a judge to be lenient with someone. And I laid out all the help, everything he had done, and how he was actually became a big part of the operation. And the old judge looked at me and said, "Nah," he goes, he's not helping you because you're a law enforcement officer. He was helping you because he thought you were a gangster just like he is." 20 years. And that changed my point of view on a lot of things as a law enforcement officer. I was always in there trying to get, the biggest sentence I could. But it did kind of change my thinking a little bit about what I was doing and the betrayal, and just taking a harder look at the justice system and started to question myself a little bit after that.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's kind of heart-wrenching,
Yeah, I didn't feel that it was the best use of taxpayers' money, and that that was the best move to make, to have this guy. He's still in federal prison today, incarcerated for 20 years for selling me what essentially was a bag of crack. And again, you can argue this a million ways, right?
Right.
The whole thing, but I don't know if that served society. That was the best way to serve society, for the taxpayers to pay for incarceration for 20 years for this guy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, you can obviously, your conscience can rest easy. You're enforcing the law of the land. That's the way it goes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, maybe they could have been a little bit more creative with sentencing, or, taking your testimony or the other agents a little more to heart, and try to not kind of ruin this guy's life,
Right. Yeah, I see. Okay, 6-7 years maybe, but and again, that's a whole different conversation. But it did. The point I'm trying to make is, what I'm taking as a positive, it did change my perspective somewhat on law enforcement and on our justice system.
Yeah, I can see why. Absolutely. Lou, one of the most popular questions I ask is advice for new officers or new agents. What would you say to the young ones out there?
All right. This is a tough one because of the lay of the land right now and the time we're living. Where, I'll be honest with you, Steve, I don't even encourage a lot of the, my friends' kids and, young men and women. I've even stopped encouraging them to go into law enforcement.
I don't blame you.
And I feel for guys and girls who, are still looking at 15 more years or 10 more years, just because of what has happened. This whole movement, which I hope and I kind of feel is dying down a little bit. But, this whole cops are the problem, really. The cops are not the problem. People who can't behave right are the problem.
Right.
So, my advice to anyone who's young, who's already in law enforcement or going into law enforcement, is don't lose the faith. All right. You're doing the right thing, and you can only control so much. It's got to be heartbreaking to work, in some cities in California and New England and some New York, where you do a great job and you do exactly what you're supposed to do. And you take this violent offender off the street and you see him out the next day. How disheartening, that must be. I can't even imagine. But what I would tell our young officers is that is out of your control. Like any other job, you can only do what you're assigned to do. You can't control what happens in that justice system. After you take your cuffs off, you don't control that. So don't lose the faith. As disheartening as it is, I do feel the pendulum is going to swing back our way. So don't lose the faith. We need more and better, police officers and more support. So let's pay our cops more, right? Let's get more qualified people. Let's pay them more, and before it's too late, and because of attrition, we can't catch up. Let's hire well-qualified people and let's pay them, and then let's support them on the street.
Absolutely. Like you said, before it's too late. I heard somebody talking on a podcast recently, and he said the problem is the kids now are getting inundated with social media is the biggest thing, and it programs these kids' brains, and all they see is anti-police.
Yep.
So the problem is you're not going to have a lot of interest in 10 years from that generation, and you're going to actually have a lot of people that for no reason don't like the police. And that's a big problem.
And can you imagine the fear being a young cop? Now it's not just, our fear was, oh man, we might get a write-up. We might get written up and then put in our file or something. Now I might get prosecuted, not only lose my job, my career, my reputation, but I might go to jail for defending myself, on the street.
They're charging these cops with murder.
Yeah, that's all running through your mind as you're pulling up to a scene now.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine it. Things were different when I started in 91. We had support, man, but don't lose the faith. It's starting to swing back, and I think it's going to. We're not going to lose this country.
Absolutely. I agree, brother, for sure. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your book. I know what I love about this cover. It's up on the screen right now. Storefront staying an ATF agent's life undercover. I got the alcohol, the tobacco, and the firearms right there. I saw that and I was like,
it's alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives.
Okay. There's also hand grenades. That's a badass cover, man.
Yep. So try to cover it all. That's very kind of subtle. I've probably done 100 podcasts. You're the first one who's pointed that out. Thank you, Steve.
All right. I appreciate your work, sir. So the book, is it a collection of these crazy stories of these fencing fronts, or is it a story A to Z of your whole career?
No, it is a story based on the evolution of these 4 storefront operations.
Cool.
So I packed a lot of information into a book, but I made it it's a fast, easy read. Brian Whitney, my co-author, phenomenal. He made it a page turner. I gave him the information. He made it a page turner. Javier Pena, the Ford, that's a Narcos guy. I don't know if you ever saw Narcos on Netflix.
Yeah, I did.
So Steve Murphy and Javier Pena are good friends of mine. And Steve wrote the blurb on the back. Javier wrote the forward. Those are the guys who caught Escobar. The book is based around these 4 operations and the evolution. It tells all the crazy story about the fist fights, how we were burglarized, how we were robbed, the crazy shit that happens, and how I went on to the next one, and it got bigger and better with each one. And it's not a happy ending story. It tells the story of, the end of my career was not a happy ending. I overdid it. I burned out. I worked myself into the ground. I made poor decisions. Didn't retire under the best of circumstances. And I don't leave anything out. I made mistakes and I talk about them. So it's not some tough guy undercover who rides away on his Harley into the sunset at the end.
Right.
It's a real story about a guy who kind of overdid it, who made a lot of mistakes, but also made some groundbreaking cases. And I was the only guy who's ever personally bought over 1,000 guns undercover in my career.
That's sick.
And so I point out what I did right. I also highlight what I did wrong, and there was plenty of it.
Just the little window we got in this hour of your career, I can tell the book. I wish we got this interview underway pretty quickly. I wish I had time to read that book, because I guarantee you it's absolutely insane. This guy right here, Steve, likes the book.
You should read it before Chaz Palminteri's done with it. That's my man Chaz Palminteri right there holding my book.
Awesome.
Now you can't leave, right? Now you can't leave. Greatest line in the movie ever.
Oh, it's so good, man. Well, Lou, thank you so much for coming on, man. That was a hell of an interview you gave. Really fantastic. And where can we get the book? Where's the best place?
The fastest and easiest way is to go on Amazon. Just Google Storefront Sting or Google my name, Lou Valoze, and it'll come right up. And you can order it on Amazon. It'll be there in a couple days. Please buy it. Check it out. The book has already been optioned by a big company in Hollywood, and they're looking to make a Netflix series, a scripted Netflix series out of the book. I'm also in talks with Discovery on doing more of a documentary style storefront show right now. So it's a good time to buy the book, and hopefully you buy the book and then it gets huge.
You can be one of those people, like a hipster, be like, I read that book before.
That's right.
He was all over these billboards. That's awesome, Lou. Congratulations, man. It's well deserved. Very, very cool. I'm gonna put the link to the book on the website, and I'll put it in the show notes of the show. I'll put it on the Facebook page. Love to have you back sometime if you're up to it.
Steve, anytime, just let me know. It's been an honor and a privilege to be on your show. It's a great show, and God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to throw you in the green room real quick, shut the show out, and then can you hang on for a sec?
Absolutely.
All right. Guys, that was episode number 96. Holy cow, that was a great one. Lou Valoze, hell of an interview. He's got a lot going on, so it's only going to be good for the podcast when this guy's deals come through. So let's hope for that. I have no doubt they will. So thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for the 5-star reviews. Please keep doing that. If you listen to all the episodes and you absolutely love the show and you find value in it, it entertains you, there's over 90 plus hours of interviews on here. And then we also do Cops in the News every other week. We talk about stories that are going on with police officers. You can go to thingspolicec.com and you can donate, or you can become a monthly subscriber. If you want to advertise in the show, you can reach me, Steve, at thingspolicec.com. And thanks, guys. I will catch you next time.